Welcome everybody, this is Torch on ThisIsTorch here on YouTube, and thank you so much for watching this video. Today I'm going to bring you a song I just finished, and the song is called Siren by the artist Sienna Scibird. So check her out on Spotify or any of the listening platforms. Also, she is featured on a show on Paramount Plus called ALLways, a reality TV show. So if you're into that kind of TV, check it out. Yeah. So anyway, let's get right into the breakdown here. So yeah, today is going to be more of a production breakdown. There is a lot to get through here. There is 111 tracks in this song. So that's including all the instrumental and all the vocal tracks and everything. So without further ado, let's jump in here and let's start with our bass layers. All right, so starting here on our chorus section, let's expand these out. So we've got a high texture bass, we have a mid bass, we have kind of a deep bass, which is sort of like the main bass in this configuration here, and a sub. So we can take a look at what's being used in here. We have Siren, and it basically doesn't matter what patch I'm using here, but I chose this patch for whatever reason, and I chose to just sculpt the sound so that you're getting only the sub stuff here. And I'm using a little R bass on that as well from Waves. Okay, so just some really low bass. And if you're listening on a laptop speaker or a phone right now, you're definitely not hearing that. And it's actually extremely subtle. So even in headphones and speakers, it's just a really low, very subtle kind of deep bass. But really the main bass that we got going on here is this one right here. Let's just take a listen. Okay, great. So that right there is basically the bass line, and everything that I'm going to show you here has that line. The instrument I'm using here is the Absinthe 5, and I'm using the bass out of phase patch. That's one of my go-to sounds anytime I'm doing sort of any kind of electronic stuff. Utility here looks like I cranked it up a few dB, and then we got just a little bit of a low cut on this EQ. Move into the mid bass. This is where things get slightly more interesting. Starting with another instance of Siren. Here I'm just using bass stab 3, and it sounds a little bit like this. Cool. So kind of a cool, like warbly or kind of chorusy sort of effect going on in there. And as you can see with this EQ, I'm just kind of using that middle range there and then slapping a little bit of this calm bare compression there to even things out. As far as effects go, there's some reverb and there's greenhouse. I don't know if you guys know about greenhouse, but here it is. Greenhouse by Mixing Night Audio. Shout out to Ken Lewis at Mixing Night Audio, one of the top mixing engineers and producers in the entire world. And so over here is basically kind of like a saturation section here. So definitely have a little bit of saturation going on. And then this right here is kind of your Haas effect. So that's going to add a little bit of livening up of the sound and also widening. So that's what that sounds like. And then another bass is the high texture bass. Let's take a listen to that one. Cool. All right, so another instance of Serum here, and this time I'm using a patch from Synthblade. And in this instance, I have an EQ, and that's shaving out all of the low stuff, the low mid stuff, and a little boost here at 1K, and then all the way up. So it's just sort of like the upper mid to high stuff, and then another Calm Bear compressor, and then another Green Haas with some saturation and some extra widening for more stereo goodness. And then here in effects land, we got a little bit of reverb also. Okay, so that is creating our sort of like our 4-layer bass sound. So playing those all together at the same time, you get to hear this combination. Okay, cool. So it's just a more massive, more fuller sound. Okay, and then on the bus, I have some soothe, which is being side chained actually. So every time the kick is hitting, it's sort of ducking it out a little bit. Not really like a compressor, not like sidechain compression necessarily, but it's a little different. Then we've got some EQ shaping here, just some for the overall sound, some more compression, and then a finalizing limiter just to kind of catch peaks and just keep things even. Okay, so that's our bass. And next we're going to get into some of our kick layers, which really there's only 2 kicks here. So the first kick here, which is the main kick, we'll start here again on the chorus. Okay, pretty basic sound, hitting it with a saturator, hitting it with some torque. With the torque, I just turned it down minus 40 cents, and then hit that with a little smack attack, adding just 5 on the attack knob there. And then this would just be an EQ with a little bit of automation. I'll get to that in a second. And then we have Knock, another great plugin by Decap. So Knock adding a little bit of punch in here, some saturation, and then clipping. And then another EQ to finish things off, and then just rolling off a little bit of the lows. Even with that stuff, I felt that I needed to add a bit more top end attack. So I added this dubby kick sample. And as you can see with this EQ here, I'm not using really any of the low stuff. I'm just kind of keeping some of the low mid range up through this range here. No, and no real like high, ultra high stuff. But it did have enough of what I needed to kind of finish the job. So if you hear them together, well, actually, first, this is what it sounds like by itself. Okay, yeah. So if I put them together, you get this. So just a combination of some low boominess in the first kick, and then the more mid-rangey and high kind of fuzzy, whatever you want to call it, with the dub kick here. Now we're going to get into some of the snares, claps, and perk. Let's check that stuff out. So I have this kind of split between sections. So I have snaps and perk in the verse and the pre, and then I have snares and claps in the chorus sections. So let's just first take a look at our sounds that we've used in the verse and pre's. Now, the first thing I want to kind of talk about is in a lot of the music that I produce, and a lot of it recently has been for sync purposes, a lot of times what they are looking for, and when I mean they, I mean like music supervisors or just people who are trying to place your music in, whether it's a TV show or a movie or a commercial or an ad or something like that, they want sections that they can play with, meaning they need an arrangement that ebbs and flows and has peaks and valleys. So you're going to be playing a lot with intensity and so dynamics and things like that. So in the verse section here, in the pre-section here, I've got some snaps. I've got something here I labeled underwater perk, and I'll kind of play that first. So actually, yeah, let's just play the pre-section here with the underwater perk first. Check it out. Yeah, that's the sound. There's a lot of the highs and stuff that are kind of sculpted out. And a very similar thing is happening also in these snaps. Here's the verse. Right. So especially on the verby snap here, it's got a really long reverb tail to it, but it's almost no highs. There's almost no highs to it. That's kind of an arrangement technique, I think. That's a good one to use in your, let's say your down parts of your arrangement is you can roll off some of the highs to certain things. And then when you hit a chorus, for example, and in most cases you want the chorus to be the bigger section, you can just open things up with more like high frequencies. So that's just kind of a good technique to use. Then we get into some snares and claps in our chorus here. Good amount here. There's about 6 tracks of stuff going on here. So one thing you can do to also create like a unique sound to your drums is combining different samples to create new blends, right? I would say the main sound here is this dub snare. It's the biggest sound. Check it out. Yeah, pretty massive dubsteppy sounding snare, and of course I'm throwing some greenhouse on that to widen it out even more, to make it sound even bigger. And then reverb with Valhalla Vintage Verb, which most of you probably have heard of. Everyone uses it. Okay, and then I'm just layering a bunch of other stuff on top of here. So let's just kind of layer the claps and the 808 snare. Firstly, let's just add the claps and just play those. Right, so it's just adding a bit more texture. And then the 808 snares are really more like kind of the ghost notes, so the additional rhythm. And if you watched my previous video, I did talk about ghost notes. They just kind of add a bit more of a groove element, so that's kind of what's going on here. Check it out. Okay, awesome. Then the next thing in line here is this snare loop glitchy sort of thing. Check it out and see what it does. Cool. So there's a few things happening in there. It's got some kind of other kind of metallic percussion type things happening. It's got its own built-in sort of verb and room to it. And also, I think it sort of adds or functions as like a bit of a glue for the rest of the percussion elements in this group here. And then I finalized it with this pop snare thing here. Let's hear that by itself. Pop snare by itself. And I'm sure that I added that to give it a bit more impact and pop, kind of like the name says here. So it's just to add a bit more punch. I wanted to really punch through, and so sometimes you can do that just by adding, another sample in there. Now let's move on to the cymbals. And of course, we've got crashes. just a basic kind of trappy sounding crash cymbal sample there. But what I want to kind of talk about here firstly is the rides, because I think that this is kind of a cool concept. Maybe you've tried this, maybe you haven't, but if you haven't, try it out, see if you like it. Basically what I did is it's the same ride sound, same sample. I tuned one up a little bit and the other one is just sort of left. So yeah, ride high is tuned up one kind of like step there. The other one I left alone. So one slightly higher and one slightly lower than the other. And then with the high one, I panned it all the way left, and then the other one was all the way right. But not only that, I'm having them alternate. So check out what that sounds like. Just the ride cymbals. And even just by themselves, just like that, you can feel that, just the stereo feel of that. Then we move on to the hi-hats here. Here we just sort of have our main driving hi-hat part panned a little bit to the right. Okay, sounds like there's a little bit of stereo stuff happening in there. Maybe with the greenhouse happening. And then I have another track of hi-hats, but these I consider to be less of the front and center driving hi-hats. These are more like the spice, the extra spices, just to make things a bit more interesting and tasty, like the ear candy. So together you get this. And all the cymbals together sound like this. All right, that's pretty straightforward. So just play around with some of the stereo imaging of cymbals and just have a good time with it. All right, now we move to synth 1. So synth 1 is sort of taking on more of a melodic role here. So we'll just play the entire group together here. Cool. Yeah, so that's the whole thing. So let's just sort of go through a little bit what we have here. So synth 1, I'm using Siren again. And this time I'm using a patch from D&B Academy, Drum and Bass Academy, Synth 8. And then in Synth 2, I'm doing another Siren, but this time this is a patch that I got just through Splice. Violins, chords, orchestral 4 is what it's called, if you want to kind of search for that and dig for it. But so they're totally different sounds. So basically I have two different synth sounds, but they're totally complementary. Playing them separately, you have synth 1. And then we have the violin. So when I laid this part down, I was definitely using a MIDI keyboard and using the pitch bend wheel to create that. So when you want to kind of create these sort of bendy sounding melodies, try using your pitch wheel. So another sort of technique I used here was to take synth 2 here, the violin one, and I just duplicated that. So that's what you're seeing here in yellow. It's the same exact thing, but I treated it a little bit differently. So everything is basically the same other than some of the panning, some of the level, but it's taking all of the same effects. And then what I'm doing here is I'm just adding an instance of Valhalla vintage verb just on the default setting. I'm pretty sure I didn't change anything. I might have low cut and did some high cut on that. But other than that, that's what it is. Just wanted it to be like a reverby version. And it's panned all the way to the left. And of course, if you play this by itself, it sounds like this. So synth 2 by itself. Okay, now I'll add the same thing but with the verb. Okay, so just giving it some cool reverbiness and stereo widening. Then we move on to synth 2. And this is more just sort of a sustained pitch. And I've done a similar kind of technique here where I'm doubling that with some reverb. And then here I did an octave lower. So all of that together is this. Which does not sound much like anything on its own, but this is really just to add intensity to the chorus. So if I were to play this in context of the entire mix, let's just take it out. And I'm still holding my breath. I can swim with the wake of your hex. Sounds great as is. It's fine. You could leave it if you wanted to, but I wanted it to sound a bit more like epic, I guess. So the synth sound that I chose and the way that I decided to treat it, I was trying to go for something kind of epic and reverby and almost like you're screaming off the top of like a cliff. That's my cheesy way of explaining that. So here it is with it. Okay, so it's not the most audible within the mix, but it's more felt. So I feel like it's adding an energy, a certain energy that otherwise would not be there. So there it is. And then we get into guitars. Let's actually start with this first group here, this grunge guitar. So I just laid down some guitar. Let's just hear them for a second. All I have going on here really is, so on guitar left, I have an instance of Amplitude, and I'm just using the Brit 8000. That's pretty much all that's going on. It's just a clean guitar going through this Brit 8000. Then for the guitar right panned, it's another instance of Amplitude, this time going through a Brit 9000. You can try different things out, but I felt like having two different qualities of amp, one in the left, one in the right, would add a bit more depth. So that's what I did. Okay, so and as you can see, one is panned hard left and one is panned hard right. And then on the bus, I have some compression, some saturation, and just some utility, which just has some gain automation, which is another technique on ebbs and flows and rising and falling in intensity within your track. You can turn things up and down as the track progresses. It just makes for a more exciting and more engaging and more interesting song arrangement. Okay, so that is the kind of main grungy guitars. Basically, I did the same thing here, but I played it an octave higher. Guitar harmonies, I guess we're starting here with harmony 1 here, right? So single note harmony part. Starting here on the verse and the pre. It looks like it just kind of goes throughout the arrangement. Let's just hear what that sounds like. Full disclosure, I'm not really a great guitarist. So the way that I like to lay down guitar is sort of like single melodies at a time. So I'll play a melody on guitar and get something that I like. And then if I want to layer some other lines on top of that to create like a counter melody, then that's what I usually do. So in the end, it ends up sounding, kind of cool. So there's that. Then we'll look at guitar harmonies down here. So that would be harmony 2s. Let's check those out. Cool. And what I've got going on in here, as you can see on each of those individual guitar tracks, it's just clean guitar going in. And then what I did was I just processed everything together on a bus. So both of them are going through this Ampeg amp here. And then I'm hitting those also with Valhalla Vintage Verb. And then some compression. And then one of my favorites, and also everybody else's favorite, is the RC20 by XLN Audio. And I just wanted to add a little bit of kind of flutter to it, a little bit of wobbling, just to kind of, lo-fi it out a little bit. Nothing major, but I just think it kind of makes it sound closer to like a sample when I do that. So that's what I did. All right, so that's harmony 2, and then harmony 3. Let's hear what that sounds like. Okay. Okay, and that reverb goes on forever, right? So this is supposed to be really verby and distant, off in the distance, But basically, yeah, same thing. Clean guitar going through an Ampeg and then through a Valhalla Vintage Verb. And you can see it's like a 16.2 second decay. Yeah, we're going for something pretty long there. And then compressing that and then hitting that once again with RC20. Okay, and then the exciting part is, what does all of that sound like together? Well, I'm not going to tell you that yet because we have one more group of guitars to get through, which I have entitled Trippy Guitar. So let's just hear what those sound like. Okay, not that trippy, but you know what I mean. Just needed a way to kind of, label them. So that's what I call them. And essentially all it is one of these tracks is just reverse guitar. So using the Waves guitar stomp, I use the Lady effect pedal to create that reverse. And then hit that once again. I hit that with an RC20 retro color again to give it a little bit of the flutter wobble effect and maybe a little bit of saturation here. So here are all of the guitars at the verse. Okay, and then maybe a little bit at the chorus. So, hey, not bad for a non-guitarist, right? So if I can do it, then you can probably do it. Trust me, I'm like the one-finger guitar person. So yeah, just play whatever you think sounds good to you, and that's all there is to it. Just make music. Okay, so the next thing we're going to get into are just some additional instruments. So, um, things to create varying levels of intensity within your arrangement to make it more interesting for the listener, to engage the listener more, to pull the listener into your music, to suck them in, right? We're not talking about just making a beat and then having it loop around. We're talking about creating something that goes up and down, up and down, up and down, down even further, or like way up. You know what I mean? As you can see, we have 3 choruses. One chorus here, one chorus here, and then one chorus here. But the third chorus is different. Okay, well, that's kind of a technique right there. It's like the last chorus. The last chorus is that final chance to sell the song or own the listener, so to speak. So if you didn't get them before, then hopefully you can grab them by the last few notes of music and leave them with a great feeling, or just give them, yeah, whatever, you know what I'm talking about. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to beef up the final chorus a few different ways. I just wanted to raise the intensity just even a few more notches if possible. So let's just listen to a regular chorus. Then we'll listen to the final chorus.
Pull me in, I'm still holding my breath. I can swim with the wake of your hands.
Goosebumps. Goosebumps. I don't know if you can see. Oh, yeah. Goosebumps. Oh, they're still there. They're still there. I know you can't. Whatever, you can't see it. Yeah. Yeah, it just, the whole arrangement lifts up. I don't know if you could feel that, but I did. And yeah, thanks to the additional instrumentation here, starting with some strings. So here's the strings. Okay, admittedly, they don't sound really that great to me on their own, but that's not the point. We'll come back to it. And then I also added a choir. Okay. Also pretty basic. Doesn't sound terrible on its own, but doesn't sound amazing either. It's sort of the combination of the choir with the strings, also with everything else that makes it have the effect that it does. But also something you may not expect is up here in cinematic effects land. I also did something different with the riser that I have. So as you can see here, 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 and here, it's just a riser, But then what I did here is I just sort of copied it over a bunch of times so that the effect would be a long sustain of just a note like this. Right? So yes, I know. Boring. It's not supposed to be interesting. It's an arrangement technique, right? So let's just play those elements, just the three of them: the riser, the choir, and the strings. And let's just hear what they sound like, just the three of those things on their own. Okay, it sounds cool, I guess. Not amazing. It's just there to raise the energy, raise the emotion. That's all that stuff is there for. And then I showed you synth 2 earlier, and it's also doing sort of a similar thing. Yeah, so it's just creating this like sustain of energy, right? So maybe that's the term for it, sustain of energy. I don't know, I just coined that now. So that's what that is. It's just creating this sustain of energy. Now, here's the opposite effect. If I take the riser out, the choir out, the strings out, and also synth 2, bye-bye. Now hear what the entire chorus sounds like.
Pull me in, I'm still holding my breath. I can swim with the wake of your hair. Fatal twist.
G-Torch, something's missing. It's the energy that's missing. I have to energize this section. So, okay, listen to it again.
Pull me in, I'm still holding my breath. I can swim with the wake of your hair.
Cool. It grooves nicely. Now let's add everything back in and hear what that feels like.
Pull me in, I'm still holding my breath. I can swim with the wake of your hair. Fatal twist, you only love what you have. Oh, the siren singing to sink me again.
Okay, guys, please, you can't deny that there's more energy there. So anyway, take that technique and try it out on your own tracks. It definitely does work. This one is sort of like an epic electronic pop sort of track with cinematic elements. And really all you need to do to get some of that sometimes, not always, but much of the time, is just add a few of these little like deep sub booms, impacts, stuff like this. Really great for like setting up a bigger section, something like that. Ooh. Right? Pretty intense. Quiet intensity. That's what you have to realize. There's loud intense, grandiose intense, and then there's like quiet intensity. Right? Okay, and then a boom. Who doesn't like a boom? Those are just sort of like some cinematic elements that kind of bring you in when you hear them. Like, poof. Oh no, what's going to happen You know what I mean? Stuff like that is good to kind of keep in mind. So another technique I like to use, this is just sort of covering a little strip of frequency up in the higher range that I feel opens things up. This is definitely something that's meant to be subtle. It's definitely something that's meant to be felt and not so audible. So that's the white noise thing. So if you listen to the chorus, here is the chorus, and you can see there's some white noise here.
And I'm still holding my breath. I can swim.
Okay, cool. Let's take that white noise out and see if it has any sort of difference.
And I'm still holding my breath. I can swim.
Okay, if you didn't feel it then, let's just start with it on and then off and then on, and just I'll cut it on and off so you can kind of hear the difference. Here is on.
And I'm still holding my breath. I can swim.
Off.
And I'm still holding my breath. I can swim.
On.
And I'm still holding my breath. I can swim with the wake of your hacks. They don't twist, you only love what you wreck. Oh, the siren singing to sink me again.
Okay, so like I said, pretty subtle, and it wasn't really meant to be audible. It wasn't really meant to be heard. It's really, really subtle. It just adds a little bit of top end life to the section. So you can just hear by itself. That's all it's doing. It sounds a bit like a hi-hat, because what I'm doing is I just have basically a straight white noise. Sound like that. I'm using this handy dandy one knob pumper effect from Waves, and that's giving it the motion. Turn it on. That's all it's doing. So it's contributing to the drums and the rhythm, but it's also adding this top end fuzz. That's just my favorite word lately. I don't know why, but that's what it is, fuzz. It just wakes things up. I hope that makes sense to you guys. Okay, then we look at the music as a whole. And by music, I just mean everything not including drums, percussion, and bass stuff. So on the music in this particular mix, I just have all of the music being side chained from the dub kick that I have going on here. So every time the dub kick hits, the music ducks out just a little bit, not a whole lot, but just enough to kind of duck it out of the way in a subtle way. That's all that's happening there. And then I have everything grouped under this instrumental, and I have just some automation here using a low pass. And you can see that there's some automation using the frequency knob here. So again, in these arrangements, you can play with different levels of intensity. Filters are a really great way to do that. So in this section, which is basically a bridge, but it's doubling as a build, I have this entire instrumental all the way. It's like low passed, and then it's opening up gradually as it builds. So let's just listen to only the instrumental, no vocals. Just listen to what the instrumental does, and keep your eye on this here. Okay, so even more impactful. Again, let's say you're coming out of a giant chorus or a big chorus, let's say. You're coming out of a big chorus and then you're leading into a very closed in and almost intimate sounding bridge slash build. It's a very drastic change in intensity, but in there lies more intensity, right? Okay, check it out. So coming from a chorus into the bridge, going into the mega chorus. Okay, so there you go. There's another kind of technique that you can use in your productions, and that pretty much does it for all of the instrumental. So I'm gonna go through the vocals a little bit, but I'm gonna try to be pretty quick with it because there are some things in the vocals, but it's not super crazy. It's mostly just kind of mixing stuff. All right, so starting with our lead vocal here, and we just have a chain that we're using here. So in this chain, I have a nectar, which I'm not using any of the pitch correction here. I've already tuned it, I've already timed it, all that stuff has been done before this point. So then there's a de-esser, there's some EQing, there's some compression, more compression, and that's it. No use of delay or reverb in there. Okay, and then I follow that with another chain. So there's some gating. There's another de-esser from waves. There's some more compression happening here, another waves compressor, V-comp. Some multi-band compression happening, and a limiter going up about 5 dBs, and then another kind of EQ curve happening there, and then just a finalizing limiter, probably just to kind of catch any stray peaks that are happening, and that is basically the vocal chain. That's pretty much the same vocal chain I'm using for the doubles and the harmonies and things like that, with some slight differences, of course, but basically everything is sort of sonically in the same realm. Okay, so that would be the lead vocals and the doubles. Here we go. So yeah, basically the same thing. You got the nectar, you got basically a similar chain happening here. So those are the doubles. And then I think, let's see, I know there's something different here. Yeah. So only difference is on the chorus. On the chorus, same chain, nectar, all the same stuff, but with one minor change. And that is that for the chorus, I want the doubles to feel just a touch wider. So again, more arrangement stuff. Your choruses, now this is just one person's opinion, but I like to have the choruses open up and be just a little bit bigger than the rest of the sections. So I'll do things, even if it's just minutely, like just adding a little bit of stereo widening, just to give it just a little bit more, just a touch more. Okay, and so those are the doubles. And then getting to our next sort of thing here. Interesting thing about these harmonies. Well, I'll let you figure it out for yourself. Have a listen to these harmonies and tell me what you think in the comments. What do you think? How do they sound to you?
Pull me in, I'm still holding my breath. I can swim with the wake of your heart. Fatal kiss, you only love what you
All right. Does it sound good to you? It doesn't sound all that great to me, but this is kind of the point I'm leading to. Did you notice it at all when everything else was playing? Because I didn't think so. And no one else that I've played this for ever notices the fake harmonies that are here, because that's what they are. These are totally and completely fake. Thank you, Melodyne. Okay, so what I did, I can tell you what I did, and that was that I basically took my doubles from the chorus and I just duplicated those. And these are exactly, take a look at the waveforms. Exactly the same. They're exactly the same. The difference is, this is what the doubles sound like.
Pull me in, I'm still holding my breath. I can swim with the wake of your hex.
Following the same melody as the lead vocal melody, and then the harmonies.
Pull me in, I'm still holding my breath. I can swim with the wake of your hex.
Okay, so originally these harmonies were the same melody as these doubles that you see here. Exactly the same. So what I did was I went into Melodyne and I just created a new counter melody or harmony using the doubles. And they do sound a little bit artifacty, and I do think that some of that actually is, CPU and my computer. The computer's struggling a little bit. Again, this song has like 111 tracks or something, and there's a lot going on in here. But anyway, yeah, it doesn't sound perfect. You wouldn't want to listen to this by itself. It sounds strange. So there you go. But when played together, leads, doubles, and harmonies.
So pull me in, I'm still holding my breath. I can swim with the wake of your hex.
Even when it's just vocals by themselves, I can definitely hear that there's a harmony. But what I can't hear is the weirdness and strangeness of the sound of those harmony vocals. And that's because they're not mixed to be heard up front. They're supporting vocals. They're not supposed to be heard all the way. You know what I mean? It just needs to feel full and be a texture, and that's exactly what they're doing. We simply didn't have time to track harmonies, and we wanted to get the song released by a certain deadline. And so at times, you just have to do what you got to do. So yes, for anybody who is commenting below who says, oh, well, why don't you just track harmonies? Why don't you just record harmonies? Well, yes, that would be the best way to go. That would be the ideal way to go. But sometimes there's schedule conflicts, and sometimes there's deadlines, and sometimes you just got to get stuff done, and sometimes you got to figure out a way. And this was me figuring out a way. And if I do say so myself, it worked out. So that's it. And then we get into other sort of textures here in the vocals, artificial highs, artificial lows. So let's just go to this one here. This is an artificial low. I think that all I did was, once again, just duplicate some doubles from the same section. But what I did is I used Little Altar Boy by Sound Toys, and I just simply took the pitch and went down an octave, put the formant up a little bit by 2.9, called it a day. Did the same thing here with this one, which is Frozen for CPU goodness. And then basically I did the same concept here with the artificial highs, But instead of going an octave down, I went an octave, you guessed it, higher. So that's it. Same concept, just different direction. And that's just giving me the illusion that I have multiple voices that I didn't actually record. So there you go, guys. Workaround. That's a workaround. You have to be creative. And then what else do we got here? Oh, not too much. We just got a few backgrounds. And I don't know what we got going on here that could be of any interest. But looks like with these backgrounds, I didn't even really process them very much. Like it looks like not at all. What do we got here? Effects. Okay, so basically it's just verb. So I just took these background vocals and I verbed them out. That's it. Maybe if I were to go back and, be more picky about the mix, then maybe I would have low cut it a little bit or something like that. But honestly, it kind of works and I'm happy with it. So there's that. Background vocals. And finally we have some ahs in the bridge. Anything interesting here? Okay, for the ahs, I just carved out a bunch of the low and low mids and scooped out just a tiny bit here. And then, just kind of did this sort of curve there. Some automation in the utility, which is just more arrangement stuff. On the individual tracks, nothing. Effects wise, nothing. But I have one center, one pan left, one pan hard right, and then I just verbed them out, and that's it. So there you go. When it comes to background vocals, and other people might have their philosophies on this. Other people may think that, maybe this is wrong or something, and fine, that's fine. But I think for the song, it sounds pretty good. So I didn't really do a whole lot with the backgrounds. They are, in fact, backgrounds. They're not front and center. So you don't need to do everything in the world. You don't have to throw the kitchen sink at it to make it sound good, because most people aren't listening to the backgrounds. They're more just kind of hearing them in passing, or they're feeling that they're there, but they're not like tuning hard into them. Okay, so, man, anything else to cover here? Okay, one more little thing here. So I do have both of these sections, right? Divided instrumental and vocals. So on the vocals, I do have this utility here. Again, just kind of a gain automation. Again, I don't know how many times I've even brought this up in this video, but yeah, just more like arrangement stuff. Look. Chorus, the final chorus, I boosted up 1 dB. It just needed one little kick, one little boost just to make it work. And in this verse, apparently I needed to bring it up 0.2 dB. So whatever works. So your arrangement has a life of its own, right? And it should kind of be like this organism unto itself, if that makes sense. And I've heard of a lot of really, really great mixing engineers and producers say very similar things. So it's not just coming from me. I'm also learning at the same time. So I'm taking advice from anybody who's got great advice. Okay. So, there might be one more thing I can show here. Let's take a look at my master channel. Master. Okay, so this utility, I know it's off. Why? Because I don't need it. Why? Because it was only to check my mix in mono. That's it. That's all it's in here for. Notice that it's set to mono, so I can just turn this on. listen to everything in mono just to make sure that it sounds pretty good in mono, even though no one really listens in mono, but it's just a good sort of practice to do. It's never a bad idea to check. Okay, then just some kind of like little EQing stuff, dipping out a little bit of the mud range, carving out just a little touch of the low, giving a little bit of this the high air region, some multiband, a bit more in the high end, some automation with the high pass, and Shadow Hills compressor, and then an ozone, which is basically doing a little bit of EQ, some compression, and some finalizing limiting. And then at this point, it's just our meter, and this is just telling us how loud our song is, and that's about it. It's not making anything sound any different sort of way. It's just to tell me, is it ready to put out? Is it going to be competitively loud, commercially loud enough to be listened to with all the rest of the music? Okay, everybody, that is all I have. It's been a pretty long video, but I think that's it. Please check out this song. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple Music, it's on anywhere you listen to your music. I will put a picture of it right here. Awesome. Okay, check it out, and please let me know down in the comments what you liked about it, what you hated about it. Give me a thumbs up, give me a thumbs down, don't care.
I don't give a damn.
Anything else you want to see me talk about, or whatever, just tell me down there in the comments. And hope to hear from you soon. This is Torch signing off, and I hope to see you in the next video.